Okay. All right, it's Sweet Child of Mine, and I hope to God somebody didn't have it turned all the way up on their car.
Did I get real loud?
I don't know.
Well,
you don't have
all
to be
right.
loud for someone's car to be at max. Or like
I was in a pinch, and I don't know if I really. Somehow I were able to identify that. That's pretty good.
I mean, you do great. Either
Okay.
I know a lot of classic rock, or you're really good at this. It's probably
Okay.
both. It's probably a little both.
All right, so we'll mix it up for the next one.
Yeah, so hey, welcome to the Open House podcast with Pat Roach. I'm Andres Gamboa, just the guy asking the questions. If you're tuning in and this is your first episode, it should be. We're going to try to pin this at the top, and this is where we would recommend anybody new to the show, whether it's a week after we record this or 2 years after we record this, to kind of understand and know what they're in for and why we are asking to borrow your time to inform you on some real estate topics as well as some other things. Again, welcome to the show. This is the 0 episode, so we're going to kind of tell you a little bit about how, why, what, and who we are. A little bit about what to expect as far as topics and episodes, the structure of the show, and then, of course, why in the world should anybody care, and why do we think this was a good idea for you, the listener. Pat, thanks for being here, man.
Yes, Andres, thanks for convincing me that this was a thing worth doing. And I am excited about it. It's one of my goals for this year, podcasting and Pilates. Those are the two things that I'm doing for 2025 that are different than 2024.
Very similar.
Yeah. And my Pilates teacher actually learned my name today, so that's a good thing. I think now she's going to yell at me less and just give me proper instruction now. So
You're not going to be called the new guy anymore?
No longer the new guy. In fact, she introduced me to the class, even though I've been there for a couple months, but whatever. Anyway.
I'll do it right away. This is Pat Roach.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm going to call you new guy.
So why did we want to do this? So first of all, Andres and I have known each other for a few years in the podcasting world, due to a couple of podcasts that he started and asked me to sit in on. And I just think it's kind of an interesting thing. I ride around in my car listening to podcasts way more than I listen to anything else. Radio, even Spotify. I've gotten to a point in my life where if I'm going to be in the car, I want to have something going on to stimulate my brain. And so, I mean, I know people get sick of podcasts. I'm just not there yet. I'm loving it. And I want to learn. So my hope would be that this podcast could be a thing. And let me say this. When I got into real estate as a career, okay, this was not my first career. It's my second career. When I got into real estate as my career, I was actually kind of shocked at how much other people wanted to talk about it. Like I have a lot of friends who have jobs that are kind of interesting and a lot of jobs that really aren't that interesting. In other words, we want to say, hey, how's work? How are things? Blah, blah, blah. But we don't really want to hear the ins and outs. It's just not interesting. And they probably don't really feel like telling us about it. But I have found that real estate seems to be different in that way. And I don't know if it's because everybody owns a house or they want to own a house. And so for all of us, we're in some form of interest level. But I mean, it goes to the point that there's even a show called House Hunters, right?
Yeah.
Which is literally a depiction of what I do for a living. And people want to see it on TV.
Yeah.
So
And
there
a lot
is
of money
something.
is paid
That's
to
right.
do so, yeah.
So there's that. And I just thought, if people actually are this interested in real estate, then why don't we just pull the curtain back, make it a little more open so that people can understand, hey, if I'm in the buyer or seller's position, here's what's actually going on. And actually it's going to be kind of helpful to understand what's going on in the real estate agent's world as they're trying to help make those transactions happen. What are their strategies? What are the things that they're thinking about? What do they need to accomplish for this to be a success? And how does that impact me as a client, as a buyer, as a seller, that kind of thing? So
Great.
thankfully, Andres had the idea of naming this open house because it's open. I thought it was not a cool name, and I was proven wrong by our feedback that we received. It was overwhelming favorite.
Yeah,
So
it
now
was.
it's called Open House.
Good
So
times.
there we go.
Good times. And I think too, worth mentioning for like the people who are listening who are like, what do I get out of this? Like, why should I care? What do we listen to with this? I think also if you're an agent, you're probably going to pick up some wisdom in this. Some of the topics, and we can go into some of the topics that we're going to go into or that we expect to talk about in the next, 20, 30 episodes or so. But for you guys listening that are agents, there is stuff in here that you're going to want to know, even from the standpoint of we'll have like updates on the market, like current event stuff going on at the timing of the recording. And so even news that you might not have figured out or understood, if you're newer to the business, if you've been around for a while, maybe it'll be helpful. But let's just break it down from the top. So Pat Roach is the president of Southwestern Real Estate. Probably should have mentioned that at the beginning, but he's a huge, humble guy, so he's not going to be doing much bragging. I'll do the bragging for him. We're going to hear his story a little bit later in this episode to just kind of understand why he's a credible source of information. And the way this is going to work is I'm more kind of the kid in class who had the courage to ask a question at the sake of sounding stupid, but maybe the rest of the class or the lecture was like, oh man, I'm glad he asked that because I actually didn't know, how closing costs work on a transaction as I'm a seller or as I'm a buyer. How to pick a good agent, how to decide that this person knows what they're doing and has your best interest in mind. Those are things that we one of them we actually already talked about and have already recorded. But we're going to be covering all sorts of topics from the seller standpoint, buying your first home, buying your second home, selling them. And then we've also already talked about, we talked about how tariffs are impacting housing prices as nonpartisan as we possibly can be. We're just laying out facts from credible sources that are coming in. We're talking about supply and demand in the market and how that affects home prices and how to understand what it really looks like. Some analogies to help you understand it for those of you who are like me, who are like, I need to break it down like I'm 5, man. Tell me from scratch. Right. We've also had how commissions work in the real estate business. So maybe as an agent, you should probably understand this, and as a buyer or a seller, you should know how the person helping you buy or sell your home is getting paid and what interest they have in mind as far as financially. So we'll cover way more topics than that. Anything that you can think of. In fact, we'll also have an ability for people to submit questions, and we'll probably have a couple as popularity starts growing. We'll probably have a couple of question and answer episodes that we can throw in as well. So that's kind of what you can expect from us. But I'm really excited because I think empowering people with information in today's world is probably going to be the biggest way that you can help and provide value, and doing it in a way that's open, that you've embraced really well already in the recordings. I think is a testament to how that can kind of help people feel more confident about what's happening and how to move forward with their important decisions as far as real estate. So
right on. Well said. And I think it's worth noting too, because so many podcasts, it's like you start listening to it and you go, all right, before I decide if I want to keep listening, I need to know if I agree with these guys politically or not.
Yeah.
And that determines whether we subscribe or not. Right.
Yep.
And as soon as we're like, oh, we disagree on something politically, I'm done with these guys. They're conservative or they're liberal or they're whatever. I'm not, and that's the end of the relationship. So we are going to be as intentional as we can to be a place where if you love Trump, you still are going to like this podcast. Mm-hmm. And if you hate Trump, you're still going to like this podcast.
Correct.
And hopefully it'll be a space where you can kind of go, all right, whatever, disagree with that, and you know what? Right into the show and
tell us,
vent.
Let us know.
Yeah, just vent, to get
also,
it all out.
If you don't know who Trump is at all, you're also going to like
this is a place you're going to like this show.
Yeah. Because again, we do break it down like you're 5 sometimes, and you're probably 5 if you don't know who Trump is.
Yeah. So just to say that, this is a place where we can agree to disagree, and that's okay. I don't have all the answers. I'm looking forward to learning a lot over the process of doing this. But as Andre said, I am a working realtor. I sell a high volume of homes. Just to put things in perspective, if you took all the realtors in the United States and measured their production, mine would be in the top 1% of individual agents and their, how many houses they sell in a year. So I do this at a high level. I also co-founded a company called Southwestern Real Estate, which strangely was born in the western suburbs of Chicago. So there's more to that story. But to say this, so I've grown a business of brokerages that we're now in 8 states and expanding. So if you're a business owner and sharing some of those struggles or things about how to build a business, those are things that I've been doing over the last 18 years. So there's going to be a lot of that. So I guess, should I transition into...
Well, your story?
Yeah.
Actually, yeah. But before that, let me actually just talk a little bit about what to expect as far as structure, because it will be different in this episode.
All right, good idea.
So for future reference, if you're listening to this and this is your first episode, that means that you are gonna be used to maybe a different kind of podcast. I don't know how or what you listen to, but here's kind of what to expect from us and how it's gonna break down. So generally speaking, we're gonna do an episode, an opening. Pat and I are kind of just gonna catch up and chit chat on things that are currently going on in our lives. I think it is important when you're listening to a podcast to kind of get to know the people that you're listening to outside of their profession. And so we both felt that was a pretty important aspect of it, and it's just a good way to help people get to know who we are and why what we're saying is important. And so that's huge. Then we're gonna go into a couple of hot finds, whether it's related to real estate or not. Basically, it's just something that we've learned that week that is kind of cool, funny, interesting, or important to know. Again, it doesn't necessarily have to relate to real estate, but just kind of some fun things for you to check out, recommendations from us. We just want to provide value elsewhere besides just the real estate stuff. And then we'll jump into a current event of real estate. It could be, what are interest rates doing today, or what did this new executive order imply for the housing prices, or stuff like that. We're just following it along. That will date the show, which is great, because that way when you're listening to this, you're like, oh man, this is back when, this was happening in the country, and look how far things have come. And so I think it'll kind of help it give like a good reflection point of how far we've come. And then there's going to be the main topic that we'll talk about, which is the stuff that I alluded to earlier, your first home, selling, buying, yada, yada, yada. So you'll expect that we're aiming to have each episode be about 45 minutes to an hour. Some of them might go a little longer, especially if we have a guest or somebody else that comes in as an expert, like an accountant or something, who's talking about taxes and real estate or something. That's a possibility.
Boring.
That's true. That's a possibility. Or some of them might be shorter because it might be a quicker explanation to things that have happened, or it's a question and answer episode that sometimes tends to be shorter. So that's kind of what you can expect of what we have going on planned. Some of that will change, and it might be fluid. So there's a chance you're listening to an episode where it doesn't quite follow that structure, because we've adapted, changed, and evolved just like everything else does. And podcasting, like life, is just a growth business. So we'll change it as we see fit or are requested to. But with that, we can kind of move into now a little bit about who is Pat Roach. How did you get to this point? And let me just first iterate, because again, I don't want to brag for you a little bit without giving away any of the story, but I can't say that for his entire life, Pat has been a person who wins. Success just kind of follows him, not the other way around. But it's not for to say that everything came easy. Pat is one of the hardest working people I know, dedicated, and of course, a fantastic husband and a great father. Somebody I look up to a lot, and I've learned a lot from already, which is kind of what inspired me to tell him, hey, dude, we have these conversations, and I take so much value out of them. I think it's important for other people to listen to what you have to say, even if it's outside of real estate. You've lived a life that doesn't, you weren't fed the silver spoon, but you've earned everything that you've gotten. And so with that, I think now that I've painted that picture, if you want to go a little bit into how...
Let me tell you a very tragic story.
How you got here.
From the ashes. Okay. So, and if you're listening to this soon after it's released, it's probably because you already know one of us. But let's hope that maybe, if there is some kind of value here and other people hear about it, that they'll tune back in, and they don't know who we are. So anyway, Um, so, all right. So just to kind of give a background, so I grew up in southern Wisconsin, town of 2,000. That town, Clinton, Wisconsin, is still 2,000 people. So, and it has been 2,000 people for like 100 years, I think. So, um, that is a thing in this country. There are a lot of little towns like that. I came from one of those, and the only reason I left because I always envisioned I'd go back home and be the history teacher and maybe the basketball coach, and that would be the ultimate life that I could imagine because all my family and relatives all live there, and what more could you want? But I left to go to college, and I decided to go to Wheaton College, which is in the western suburbs of Chicago. And if you don't know Wheaton, it's like a devout evangelical Christian college, and they take that very seriously. And I use that word hesitantly because evangelical has become a very different thing these days than what I perceived it to be when I was 18-year-old looking to go to college. It was a very positive experience and continues to be a great source of connections and good people that I have known from there. But it's worth mentioning because that is kind of part of my background. And so that'll maybe show up in terms of it's a culture that I understand for sure. So, okay, so while I'm at Wheaton College, a friend tells me about this summer job with this company called Southwestern. If you noticed before, I said the name of my real estate company is Southwestern Real Estate. Okay, so here's how this got started. As a college kid, I hear about a job selling educational products door to door. And my friend told me about it, and I was like, man, that sounds ridiculous. Like, that sounds like a thing that doesn't work out. But my friend was really sharp, good-looking dude, like really outgoing. And he's like, well, I made $12,000 last summer doing this, door-to-door thing. And I'm like, no way. And I had to pay for school. So I went to the meeting, ended up deciding to do it. It was 80 hours a week. It's away from home for the whole summer. It's all the things. And as much as I wanted to quit the first day and the second day and the 50th day, I did keep at it. I learned a ton. And in the end, I felt like I really grew up that summer. Ended up making about $16,000 in 1993 for a summer job. That was pretty outstanding. And so I thought, I don't want to do it again, but I can't deny the fact that I'm better off for having done it. I need to do it again. And so I worked with Southwestern as a college student, paid for all of college by a few summers of doing that. Andres, just so you know, also fellow bookman. So Andres, you did 4 summers, is that right?
I did.
4 summers. And that's kind of how we got reconnected. Oh, Bookman t-shirt. If you're looking at this on YouTube, you'll see he's wearing a Bookman t-shirt, which is classic.
Not planned, by the way.
It's just who you are. So, so anyway, so I do this crazy summer job thing. When I graduate, I decided, instead of going back to Clinton and being a history teacher, I actually want to help college kids have this experience. So I went full time with Southwestern as a sales manager, recruiting college kids. And that was really cool because I believed in it so much and still do believe in it to be a thing that grows people up in a way that is exceptional. When you go through those trials, not only can you come out, it's nothing that people should feel sorry for you because you come out with a ton of skills, a ton of maturity, income. There's just so many perks about that program that I believed in the cause, and it was nice for me to be able to sell that as a career. So my organization started to grow and grow and grow. Made lots of great friends working in that company. And after about 10 years of doing that, my organization was spread all over the country. So I was on the road 3 nights a week, probably 3 weeks out of the month. So it was a lot of travel. And it was just about the time we had our third child that I was like, I am totally missing out on too much at home. And I don't want to quit, but I'm not going to keep traveling all the time. So that kind of created a rift in my life where I was like, well, I got to do something. I got to make a change. All right. So this would have been about 2005 is when I was like, this is happening. Prior to that, what are you laughing at?
It's because
you just know where it's going to go.
I just know where it's going, and I'm like, I can't believe the year that you chose to do all of this.
Yeah. Okay. So if you go back in time, in the early 2000s, some of my friends that I sold books with were investing in real estate. So they would call me up and say, hey, we found this project. You want to put in some money? And I was like, sure. So I put in some money, and sure enough, the returns were amazing. Okay. And this kept happening. Got another project, put some money in, got great returns. It just kept going. We were holding on to some property that were rentals. Now, keep in mind, a lot of this was out west, so Colorado, Wyoming. And I live outside of Chicago still, so I wasn't like putting eyes on these properties or anything, and I wasn't really involved. I was just a passive investor. And that's important to the story. So the way when it was time for me to change careers, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I knew I just wanted to be at home, and I thought, well, I've been making money in real estate. Why don't I start flipping houses? And that could be a thing that I could do and make some money. I had a great connection with a general contractor who knew his way around fixing up houses. So we decided, all right, we're going to do this. We're going to team up. And it was a little tiny company called Project Upgrade, which still gives me a little bit of PTSD when I think about it. But anyway, because here's what was about to happen. The lead up of the housing boom in the early 2000s, if you go back, there are charts where you can go back and look at home prices in American history, okay? Like going back into the 1700s, how much it cost to buy a home. They chart this stuff. And over time, you'll see it generally appreciates at a pretty nice, rising graph. Along that graph, you'll see little bumps where things kind of accelerated really fast. We call that a housing boom, right? Prices are going up. And then it hits a certain point, and then there's a correction where things have to come back down, and they usually dip below the line where they previously had been, and then they kind of come up and normalize on that same trajectory.
It's like a heartbeat.
It's like a heartbeat. Okay, very good. And those are kind of spread out throughout American history. In the early 2000s, there was a housing boom that was 5 times bigger than any boom previously recorded in U.S. history.
It was a heart attack.
Okay, I was getting ready to have a heart attack. But
I'm the up of the heart attack.
Yeah, and again, I'm not a professional. I don't know anything about real estate. I threw some money in, I made some money. I threw some more money and made money. So whatever. So I'm just like, okay, well, I guess I'll just do real estate stuff since that always seems to work out. The market was getting ready to have a heart attack, and I didn't know it. So I quit my job.
Few people knew it, by the way, which that could be a whole different episode.
That's right.
We have people watch Big Short, but you quit your job.
Yeah, that's right. So I quit my job. Now, I'll go ahead and say a word about that. In resigning my position, if at Southwestern, if they don't want you to quit, then they send you to the next person, who's a little higher up, and they take a swing at you. And so I was talking to my director, then to the president, then to the CEO of the family of companies. And when I got to the CEO, thankfully we knew each other well because his kids sold books in my group when I was a sales manager. So we had a good rapport and a familiarity with each other. And he said, well, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I think I'm going to flip houses because, I've been doing well with real estate investing and blah, blah, blah. And he goes, "Oh my gosh, you want to be in real estate? We want to be in real estate. I mean, we should start a real estate company together." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? Like, what do you want to do?" And he said, "Well, there's a ton of kids who have come up in our program who now sell real estate around the country, and they're doing really well with it. And if we could just build a real estate company, then they could just stay with us and build their careers with us." And I was like, "So you would want me to be a realtor?" And he's like, "Yeah, we'll create a brokerage and we'll scale it nationally." And I was like, "Man, I don't know. I've never thought about being a realtor. I only know 2 real estate agents, and they're both old ladies." And, I was just really kind of dumbfounded because, at Southwestern, you're surrounding yourself with a lot of people who are digging deep, right? They're digging deep in their hearts as to, here's what I want to do something. I need help, but I'm willing to work, and I want to get past my pain points, and I want to accomplish something, and people are going for it, right?
Yeah.
Neither of those realtors that I had worked with in the past seemed like they met that definition in any way. They were like the definition of coasting. And I was just like, I can't imagine doing that job, just based on that example. So anyway, I was like, "Yeah, I don't think so. I'm flipping houses." He's like, "Well, if you ever change your mind, let me know." So I went away and bought my first dumpy house in my hometown of Glen Ellen, Illinois. And, general contractor Greg went after it. And in the end, when it was time to sell the thing, the agent had given me a number. She was like, "Oh, yeah, you'll be able to sell it for this," which is what I based the entire budget on. And all of a sudden, it wasn't selling. And it wasn't selling. And I'm like, what the heck is wrong? She's the one who gave me this information. She's the expert. Well, I sold it for a margin less than what she had said, but got it done. And in the end, I made about $20,000. Okay, not as much as I was expecting to make. So
For all that effort.
yeah, and you use a lot of capital in order to get that done. And so then you're like, "Man, I can do this faster, and we can do this better." So we did it again, and I literally made $5,000 on that one. And I was like, "This is not moving in the right direction." Meanwhile, I'm like living on credit because I'm trying to figure out how am I going to get a paycheck, So thankfully I had a huge line of credit on my house that I just kept tapping into, going, "Well, I'll replace it when I can, but this is what I have to do for now." Third flip, didn't even get to see the end of it. We had to walk away from the project because the market was nosediving so hard that we just couldn't get the job done fast enough, and the value of the home was dropping by the month. And it ended up in what's called a short sale, where it wasn't a foreclosure, but they didn't make us pay anything to sell it, and it was definitely upside down from what was owed to the bank.
Nice.
So
for those of us who are 5 and need it explained like that, you borrowed X amount of money and the house sold for less than that amount of money, which means you owed money now.
And the bank said, "We'll let you go away with 0, but now you have a short sale on your credit report." It's not as bad as a foreclosure, but it's bad.
Yeah.
And so
You didn't lose the arm, but you lost your hand.
yeah. All right. So meanwhile, out west,
It's just dying.
So we're out west with my other investments, and my friends are going, "We got bad news. Some of the investments that we've been doing have really taken a toll, and we have to go bankrupt." So there was this one property in particular in Laramie, Wyoming. It was a 6-unit. And if you've ever been to Laramie, it's not Palm Springs or it's not Bel Air. I mean, it's
not happening.
It's kind of rustic or rusty. And so we've got this 6-plex, and they're both like, so I'm like, "What does that mean?" They're like, "Well, it means we're out as a part of the bankruptcy that we're both filing,
Ouch.
you now own that all to yourself. And I'm like, well, that could be a good thing, except there's only, these are all like studios, studio apartments in a dump town.
Yeah.
Sorry, Laramie, if you're listening.
Yeah,
And it's
no,
kind of,
don't apologize. Laramie
is
is
back
like
in
where they go shoot
2006.
westerns, so they don't have to use special effects or filters.
yeah. So, so basically, it's half rented out, which means it's not getting enough rent to pay the mortgage. So now I'm bleeding money on this thing that I own. Can't get the other units rented because everybody's, yeah, you can't sell it. We were trying to do all these things. Meanwhile, to avoid it falling into foreclosure, I keep tapping into this, whatever money I have to pay that mortgage every month. It just kind of felt real icky. There were a couple of condos in Denver that I owned that the property manager just straight up bailed and took my money. Meanwhile, later, just skip to the end of that one. Later, I found out some dude had nothing to do with the property or the building or anything. He just observed that there were vacant units in this building that I owned, and I was never there, and there was no property manager. And he straight up busted into them, took them over, and rented them out.
No.
Yeah.
I didn't know that part.
And I even tracked this
entrepreneur.
dude down and
should
confronted him on the phone. And I was like, dude, you put people in there and like you've been collecting rent. You don't own it. I do. And I'm paying the mortgage. And he was like, oh, you should be thanking me, because at least somebody's taking care of it. It was unbelievable. And apparently the guys had a track record of doing that kind of stuff.
Oh, so you didn't recruit him.
I did not recruit him.
He's a little entrepreneur, though. Good for him.
Yep. He's finding a way. That's for sure. So just to kind of bring it to the painful end, basically, my whole financial world is turned upside down. And during the recession, there was a thing called a mortgage modification. And we were getting pretty desperate because just throwing all this good money towards bad properties, and it was just getting really ugly. And I wasn't making any money flipping houses. And so for a few years, it just keeps weighing on you. And it's like the kind of thing where had it gone on longer, I might have had more dangerous thoughts, but it was kind of like getting into the range of, it'd be nice if somebody could just smash into me with their car. Like I'm not going to try and hurt myself, but it wouldn't be the worst thing if something bad just happened. So
That's intense.
Yeah, it was pretty intense.
Wow. Welcome to Open House.
Yeah, welcome to Open House. It isn't always this sad, but
no, there's a comeuppance that's coming. We know this.
Yeah. That's right. It all works out. So this mortgage modification thing, the banks so many properties were going into foreclosure, and the banks when they take a property back as collateral for a loan, especially if there wasn't a large down payment. So let's say somebody buys a house with 3% down, like a FHA loan. Okay. So there's 3% equity in the property. If the value of that goes down, it doesn't take long for that house to be upside down, meaning it is now worth less than the owner owes to the bank. So, let's just put it in round numbers. If you bought a house for $100,000 and you put 3% down,
that's $3,000.
You owe $97,000.
That's right.
If the market, Andres, I call on you.
$3,000.
Yes. So if the market goes down and all of a sudden that house is worth $90,000, meaning if you had to sell it, it would sell for $90,000. Okay. The bank isn't going to get all their money back. So they don't want to start taking all of this collateral back in all these houses. So they started to make a deal with people and said, hey, look, we will modify your loan. You're at a 6% interest rate. We'll put you into a 2.5% or a 3% interest rate. That puts the payment down to where you can afford it. You can stay in the house. We don't have to take a foreclosure. We're still making some money. So this was a thing that was
And-
happening.
And the house will revalue itself after we're done with this mess that's happening right now.
Yeah, I mean,
Could be
stay in
next
here
year, could be
for
10 years, but at some
hopefully
point
stay in here for 10 years, and then you'll be back on top, and we never had to take the foreclosure. There'll be equity, and you can sell it and make some money, and we'll
Yeah.
get all of the loan repaid.
Yeah.
Okay.
which is win-win-win.
Win-win-win. So we're in such dire straits that I went and talked to a company that specialized in mortgage modifications. And the guy sits me down. I was also talking to bankruptcy attorneys because I was like, I don't really know the way out of this whole thing. And I remember
Scary.
them telling me, guys like you are the worst. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? And he's like, they meant it in a compliment. And here's what I mean. They were like, because guys like you just who keep trying to find a way, you'll just keep digging a bigger and bigger hole. And, just because you don't want to accept your fate. And in the end, it's going to be way, way worse if you had just talked to us, a year ago. And it's like, all right, well, that's what I get for selling books, finding a way at every turn.
Or if you had just listened to the Open House podcast with Pat Roach.
Oh
you
my
would know what
gosh.
to do.
Time machine, where are you?
Unbelievable.
So I said, so he said, the bankruptcy attorneys referred me to this dude who does loan modifications. And they're like, it's kind of a thing right now. You might have some success with it. Go ahead and give him a call. So I go meet him. And he said, well, here's the thing. We can do this for you because your loan's with Bank of America, and they do these all the time. By the way, Bank of America is not a sponsor of this show, but they could be.
They could be, absolutely.
So
BOA, if
think
you're
about
listening.
it, BOA.
We'll wear T-shirts.
So he says, but here's how this works. In order for them to listen to you and to take action in modifying your mortgage, you're going to have to stop paying your mortgage.
That's right.
And I'm like, whoa, that's what we have to do now. My wife and I, we actually built the house that we live in. It's like, our baby that we created with an architect. And it's like, everybody feels a close emotional attachment to your house. But I was like, man, what if this doesn't go well? But anyway, I perceived it as my only way out. So that's what we did. And as they did their application for loan modification, a couple of months go by and they report back and they're like, hey, we got bad news to report. They're saying, Bank of America is saying that the investor who holds your loan does not participate in loan modifications. And I'm like, wait, I don't even understand all the words you just said. So let me say it this way. When you have a mortgage with Bank of America or any other large bank, they actually service the mortgage. So that's who you pay your mortgage to every month. But they will sell that loan to somebody else who wants to take on that debt. And then that person receives the interest. Bank of America takes a fee for servicing the loan, and they're happy to do that all day long. The investor...
There's no risk there.
Right. The investor is making the spread on the interest. And then, they might even go and sell your loan to somebody else. And then that person. So if you own a mortgage for a long enough time, your actual note on the property will be sold over and over and over again to different investors. But you just keep paying your payment to whoever's servicing your loan.
Hold on. Pause that there because this is
right.
a good moment to explain like your five, because I know there's people who might be listening to this. And I understand what you're saying because I went to economics and literally this is what we studied in college.
Okay.
But, and sorry to assume, but just in case I get to ask the stupid question, right, that somebody else in the class is hoping that would get asked.
Andres, I call on you.
Okay, so the question would be, what do you mean banks buy loans, right? And so long story short, on the upset end of you as a consumer, you say, hey, I need $100,000. They give you $100,000 plus 6% interest. So you really are paying $106,000 because that's what they get out of letting you have money. They're taking a risk and giving you money, right? Letting you borrow money. On the other side of that, think about it from the person who's loaning the money from the bank. they maybe don't want that risk. They might go, oh my gosh, this guy might not pay his bills. So in order to get out of that, I'll go, hey, does anybody want to make about $5,500? Because I got a guy paying 6% interest, and if this guy pays you back, then you're gonna make 5.5%. We'll keep the half of the percent, and then you get to keep the other, and then that way I don't have to deal with him not paying. That's your risk. It's your problem now. Bank of America gets the whatever bit for being the broker of that, and somebody else buys that risk.
Yes, correct.
That's what happens. So then that can happen multiple times, because you might say, because this is from the other side of the transaction. That's how the money moves in that regard, and that's how people make money in the business. Big banks don't have to take that risk because they're going to get fees from hundreds of thousands of people who buy homes, maybe millions of people buy homes. So that's like all those little bits add up, and then they don't have to assume the risk, and they give it to a smaller bank or sometimes a bigger bank or equal sized bank, but it moves around because somebody else purchases your interest
that's
being
right.
paid. Did I do okay?
Well said.
Okay.
Well
cool.
said. So
that
they
bank,
come back
Bank
and
of
they
America
go,
is like that person.
the organization
Yeah.
who holds your note says we're not participating in loan modifications.
So they don't want to lower the interest rate to work out a way so
Yeah.
everybody win-win
Right.
wins. Back to that. Okay.
And they know I haven't been paying my mortgage for a few months, and they're still like going, yeah, we're not playing. Are you going to let it go to foreclosure? Because I guess we'll just take the house. So anyway, I'm like freaking out because I'm like, wait, you guys are the ones who told me to stop paying my mortgage. And you guys said you do this all the time. And they're like, well, we do. And sometimes this can happen. But we recommend that you apply again. And I'm like, what's that going to do? And they're like, well, sometimes they'll listen to you if you keep applying. All right. So this goes on and on and on. And eventually I get served foreclosure papers on my birthday in my front yard. There's a bunch of people over. Some nice old lady comes walking up with this FedEx. And I walk up and I'm like, hey, you got something for me? And she goes, you've been served. What? I was like, thank you for your discretion. And I went in my house and I put those. No, she wasn't dressed up. She just had it in a FedEx envelope.
Oh.
And
this is kind of like Pineapple Express, where he dresses up as different things so people can let him in so he can serve them, because people will avoid being served. Oh man, I thought she was disguised as a FedEx person going,
no.
Gotcha.
She was a very nice old lady, but she was just like, you've been served. And so what that means is I had been served papers from the court stating my house is now officially in a foreclosure process. Okay, it's a legal description of you're so far behind in your payments, your bank is now suing you to either pay them what's owed or we're taking the house.
It's like a repo on a car.
Yeah, right. And so I put that stuff in my office and I'm like, oh my gosh, my world's falling down around me. And you don't really want to tell anybody either. So you just carry it around. So I go back to the people. I'm like, what is my out here? What are we going to do? Because I don't want to, leave my house. And I'm also looking at my financial situation going, I'm not going to get approved for a loan from anybody. I can't buy a house. So I'd have to rent a house. And then you start looking at the rentals that are on the market. And I don't have any income because of my stupid flipping. And all of a sudden I'm like, I can't afford anything but the crappiest thing. And that's a short-term solution. And now I'm going to be living in that with my wife and kids. This has really turned out to be a great idea. So it just so basically what they said is, if you continue to apply for the modification, there's a rule that they have to stall the foreclosure process. So what that meant was basically I had to keep applying and applying and applying, and that held the foreclosure case at bay, and my house was in foreclosure for 5 years. Okay.
No. I didn't know
5
this
years.
detail. This is the most detail I've heard of this story.
Yeah.
But this because it's relevant to the podcast. Open
yeah,
house,
and
baby.
so so again, if you find yourself in a bad spot, maybe this tale will be one to go, oh, there's still a way out.
Or at the very least, if you're an agent going, it can't get any worse than that. This guy, you started the real estate as poorly and opposite as anybody could ever start.
Yeah. So okay. So anyway,
Wow.
so I'm going to pause the story there. I'm going to back up a little bit because after, that third flip going into a short sale, I was like, oh man, I remember I was talking to a banker trying to get a loan for that property. And he was somebody that I knew in town. And we were friendly with each other and everything. And he wasn't going to give me the loan. And I was just kind of reflecting on how my former CEO had, offered an opportunity to start a real estate company.
Oh, man.
And he goes, I was just telling the story just because we were killing time or whatever. And I wasn't really seriously thinking about it. And all of a sudden he goes, Pat, are you telling me that he was going to offer you an opportunity to start a business? And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, if somebody does that and they're going to pay you to do it, you want to do that. and I'm like, I do? And he goes, man, somebody gave me an opportunity like that once I was fresh out of MBA school, and that business failed. It was still one of the best learning experiences of my career. I wouldn't be where I am if it wasn't for that. And I'm like,
wow.
Holy cow, maybe I need to think about this. So this all ties together because what I ended up doing is I started to go, well, what does it take to be successful as a real estate agent? And I didn't really know the answer to that. I started to book appointments with different real estate agents that I knew. And it basically would just interview them around what are the controllable behaviors that they do to help them be successful.
Besides those old ladies?
No, I talked to them as
did?
well.
Wow.
Yep. Well, I talked to one of the two. One was very successful. The other was
Dead.
She did it for a long time. And then I started talking to people who were managing brokers of offices, and I was just like, how does it work? How do you do what you do? And a lot of people were extremely generous with their time. I think they ultimately probably wanted to recruit me to join their company or whatever, so that's probably why they were generous. But I learned so much, and I kind of figured out some things that I knew, wow, okay, there are some really dysfunctional behaviors in a lot of these brokerages. And what I had from a positive experience working at Southwestern, I was like, if we shaped a brokerage around how I know businesses can run, we could actually make some noise. That could actually be a really cool thing. So fast forward back into the financial hardship scene, I get to a point where I was just like at dire straits. And I thought, I think it's time for me. And when I say dire straits, here's what I mean. I had maxed out a line of credit on my house for $300,000. I had taken out all the credit cards that I could get and had maxed all of them out. Again, just trying to, survive and deal with all these things. I literally was within a week and a half of being like no cash, no credit, no nothing, no resources. And, or at least that's what I thought. Okay. That's an important asterisk. And I called Henry, my former CEO, and said, hey, I've been doing some research on this whole real estate thing. And if you want to do it, I can get my license here in Illinois. They actually just changed the rules because so many realtors were getting out of the business. They changed the rules to where if you get the license to be a managing broker, you can do that and start your own company on your very first day. The norm had been you get a real estate license, you work for somebody for 2 years, then you can test and do the classes to be a managing broker and start your own thing. But everybody should have oversight when they're brand new, and they did away with that. Right. For a little 2-year gap before they were like, this was a bad idea. But it served us really well. I said, we can start in Illinois, and if you want to do it, I want to do it.
What
And
year is this?
that was 2007.
That wasn't even the bottom of the
No.
crash
It
yet.
was just getting rolling. I knew it was going bad because of what I was experiencing, but I was like, okay. And he graciously said, okay, well, let's do it. You're the president. Let's start. Like in that phone call, he said, let's do it. Let's start. And he goes, just send us a budget and we'll get it going. And I'm like, what do you mean budget? I don't know. I don't, I don't know how to do a budget. I'm broke. And he said, well, how much do you need to get paid? Let's just start with that and we'll put you on payroll. And eventually when your commissions are bigger than what we're paying you, then you'll be, we'll switch you over to commission. And I was like, how much do I need to get paid? And I was like, I don't even know how to answer the question. He's like, we'll just pay you what you used to make when you were a sales manager here. And I was like, okay.
Wow.
And he said, we will have you on the May 15th payroll, because this was the end of April is when I talked to him. And I was like, okay, is there any way we could do it May 1st? Because in my mind, I was thinking, I don't have enough cash to get to the 15th of May. And essentially, he was like, well, it's pretty close to the end of the month already. I don't know if we can get it processed, but sure, why not? Let's just try, and hopefully we can get you cash on the first of the month. And that was how I was able to live moving forward. Now, so that was huge. Okay. Not too long after that, I came back to Henry and said, hey, listen, you should probably know more about my financial status since we're going into business together. And he probably would have preferred to hear that before he put me on payroll. But in the end, I told him everything. And he said, well, just keep me up to speed with it as it goes, because I want to be able to help you if we can and whatever. Fast forward all the way to the end of the foreclosure process. Eventually, after the 5 years ran out, there was a day where they posted papers on our door, if I remember it correctly, notifying us that there would be a sheriff's sale of the property on a set date. And a sheriff's sale, it's called a sheriff's sale because that's the day the sheriff comes and tells you have to be out of the house.
Kicks you out.
And then they're going to sell it at an auction. And I was like, I can't believe this is happening. So I called Henry and I was like, hey, it looks like this is the end of the road. We got this notice and I don't know what we're going to do. And he said, well, how much would it take to put you back into your previous mortgage? And I said, well, I don't even know if it's still an option, but it would be about $125,000. That's like 5 years of mortgage payments and penalties and fees. And he said, well, when you were a sales manager here, you owned a lot of shares of our corporation. And that stock has just been sitting there. And I was like, what? And he goes, you have a lot. And we can cut you a check and you'll have it on Monday. And I'm like, what? I was like, I thought I couldn't sell that unless I was retiring, which tells you how great of a businessman I was. And I'm like, and he's like, no, people need to sell stock for all kinds of reasons over time, and you have enough to do that. And they cut me a check, and I called Bank of America, and I said, hey, I'm in foreclosure. I've got a sheriff's sale, but I'm going to reinstate my mortgage. And they were like, okay, you can bring a check for this amount, take it to this office building. So I drove there. And I walk in and I'm like, I'm here to reinstate my mortgage. And this is inside an office building in Deerfield, Illinois. It's a nice area. It's like on the 5th floor, interior office. And she's sitting behind bulletproof glass. Nice. I'm like, what the heck is this place? And I'm like, well, okay, so what do I do? Here's my check. And I slide it under the thing. she's like, oh my gosh. She's like, we never see checks like this. She's like, I'll come out and fill out the paperwork with you. And
Wow.
so then I signed it, and I was back in my mortgage, and the foreclosure was over, and it was a very strange time for sure.
Okay, so how did it feel driving over? Because that's the thing about the 125,000 or whatever that you got the check cut. That was your money. You earned that over years of door to door, 80 hours a week grueling,
Uh-huh.
plus managing, recruiting, traveling, being away from your home, family. Like that whole time, you were actually paying future Pat. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So how
Yeah,
did
I
that feel
wasn't
to
I
get
didn't
that
think
check
about
and
it.
take it?
Yeah, so this is going to sound really strange, but I actually was kind of angry. Um I was angry that it was just this money. Well, I was super grateful that I didn't know about that money beforehand, because I would have tried to get access to it and thrown it after those bad properties in a
Oh,
desperation mode. So I felt really blessed in a way of like being protected from myself, but I also kind of was mad that the solution to this whole thing, because when you're in that kind of trauma state for that long, you can't help but over spiritualize everything. And it's just like a constant prayer of, please
yeah.
help me, please help me, please help me. Like, I need help, I need help, I need help. And then for the solution to simply be a financial solution felt non spiritual, and
Mm.
felt kind of like I didn't even get a break. Like the mortgage companies didn't even help me, and all these other people got help, and I didn't. And so there's like a lot of weird stuff going on that, looking back on it, it's like, how could you not be so happy? I just wasn't, and so that was a tough time. But it did feel great to go. I'm not in foreclosure anymore. I can, hold my head up, and I can know that nobody's going to take my house from me. And by that point in my real estate career, I actually was doing well, even though the from 2007 to 2012, the market got worse every single year.
Yeah, it was
And
bad.
I was able to grow my personal real estate business every single year. Well, no, 2010, I went backwards a little bit, but then rebounded back up and kept climbing. Um, so it all ended up working out. In about 2012 is when I started to go, I think I've got the hang of this, where I could invite somebody else into this business. And I recruited a woman named Sarah Goss, who still works with us.
She's great. We
She's
love Sarah.
awesome. And I, I really, really enjoy selling real estate. And I was kind of content just being a one-person company. I don't think Southwestern would have appreciated that, but I was just like pretty content. Like life was good. And then I recruited Sarah, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so much better. Having somebody else to teach this to, who listens and does and is successful, like it was just like, man, this is so nice to be able to share this with somebody else. And it was just the two of us until there was a third and a fourth and a fifth. And then we started an office in Texas, and then there were a handful down there, and then in Nashville and in Florida, and or whatever the order was. And it's just become a thing where it's like, I can't believe my life turned out so well when it was so horrible for a 7-year stretch. Um, but yeah, it has turned out. So I think what I would like anybody who's listening to kind of gain from all this is, um, what I'm doing today. I've figured out how to do it at a high level, um, but it hasn't been from lack of suffering. So there is, no matter where you're at in your journey, I can probably identify with where you're at, where you've come from, where you find yourself heading into, whether that be a plus or a negative, a pleasant or an unpleasant. And so it isn't, um, yeah, I don't want to portray myself as somebody who's just gone from success to success. It's actually been a mixture of both, and such is life.
Dang. Well done.
Whew.
Well done, sir.
I haven't told that story in a little while, so that was something to revisit some of that.
That was great. Let me ask you this so we can end on a note where people kind of understand what you're at now realistically. So how many agents now are in Southwestern real estate that work with you?
So we have 45 agents.
Okay.
We're in 8 states, so we're
8
kind of spread
states.
up into these little offices that are spread around. We all kind of commiserate together.
So that's 18 years that you've been doing this.
Correct.
When you said you were in the top 1%, let me, for even more numbers perspective on that, like what does even 1% even mean? So the average real estate agent will sell, if they sell 3 homes in a month on average for the year.
No,
That's
these
a good,
numbers are, yeah.
That's pretty good.
To be honest with you, if somebody is selling,
Yeah. If
three,
I
so
tell
that'd
you,
be-
Pat, I'm in real estate, I'm selling about 3-4 houses a month on average.
yeah,
You're like, that's
36
pretty good.
houses in a year is very good.
Yeah, that's pretty good, right? You're like, wow, you're doing great. Money must be all right. Things are going well. That's a good. That's a thing to celebrate. So
Yeah.
Pat sells like 50 a year personally. So,
Yeah, so 50's
for
been a good
perspective.
number for a few years, and then in 2021, when everything was, the follow up of the pause due to COVID,
from Pandy.
I sold 70 houses that year.
Yeah.
And that was insane because I sold 50 of them in the first 6 months of the year. And so that was like absolutely bonkers.
Yeah.
But
So that's what Pat can do. I'm just saying this. I'm asking you this to display the difference in growth. And like when you say I've done this at a high level, like we're talking like you are very, very elite. And there's different kinds of agents too. Some people sell like super big homes. Some people try to sell only rental properties. Some people are only buyers. Some people are only sellers. So, right? So you've done them all. You can sell a multi-million-dollar house. You can sell a very, very lower cost home, cheap house. I don't want to say
sure, whatever.
right, whatever. You know what I'm saying? Low cost home.
First time home buyer.
Rental properties. You can sell. You're a student of the game, which is what allowed you to not only grow as a person but teach other people how to be also successful at this, because there's people in your business who also do well. So just to highlight how far you've come and what you know.
Yeah. And there's also agents who create teams. And so when you look up their production, it'll say like they sold 250 houses this year.
Right.
That
Their
means there's a
team.
group of people who are operating under one person's name that are putting out that kind of production. And to your point, some people, specialize in Hinsdale right down the road where the least expensive home is $1 million. So their, volume in dollars is going to be very high, much higher than me because I am working across all price points. But that's to say this. If you take all the agents that are out there, there's thousands of agents in DuPage County who sell real estate. It's just that a lot of them don't do it very well. They don't sell a lot. So I would be in that top 100 agents for my county.
That's why
I should probably look up what my actual number is, but it changes all the time. So whatever, just so you know.
The point is,
he knows what
your
he's doing.
shit.
Yes.
And so that to me, that's why I felt the need to ask you to do this, because I'm like, man, Pat, even though I have a really great real estate agent who I trust and know really well, my sister-in-law also does it. I still call Pat for real estate advice just to get a third opinion, and usually it's very, very valuable to me. And so I thought, man, a lot of people would probably appreciate hearing about this. So that's a little bit about who Pat is and why it's worth checking out the other episodes and listening in. I think that this is probably a good place to close. In conclusion, when you find yourself in times of trouble, listen to the Open House Pat Roach show, and specifically about real estate and other items. But no, realistically, I learned a lot from even this story, Pat. I mean, asking for help, telling people the truth and what was happening, where you told Henry, hey, here's the real transparency situation of it. And I think that flavor of transparency is going to carry you over into this show and kind of help people feel understood, heard, seen, and they might be able to come and ask some questions, take a lot out of this. So great job doing that. Anything you'd like to add as we close up?
No, I think the rest of these are going to be way more fun. And we have recorded a few already, so you'll see a few are ready to drop. And if you enjoy it, let us know and tell somebody about it. This will be fun. Let's see what happens.
Hit the follow button and leave us a review if you've heard a couple of these episodes. It'd be great on that. So more on how to get a hold of us. We're working on getting together like a mailing campaign, so when new episodes are coming out. Stay tuned for that. Some of the other episodes might already have described what that is. That is, we will have a more robust way of doing that. But if you need to reach out to us, Spotify will have a way for you to leave us a comment. Or find me on Instagram. My socials are ARGBMF across Twitter, Instagram, whatever it is. Pat does not have anything.
I'm not on any socials.
So just reach out to me and we'll get questions in, topics you want to hear, all that stuff. Thanks so much, everyone. It's been awesome. This has been episode 0 of the Open House Podcast with Pat Roach. I'm Andres Gamboa. Bye-bye, everybody.